Last year, we successfully built a living, breathing 700cc two-stroke dirt bike. It was the most ambitious and costly project that we have ever attempted on this channel. But just how costly was it really? Well, my name's Max, this is 999 Laser, and in this video we're going to be going into the gritty details of just how expensive it really is to build a custom 700cc dirt bike. First things first, let me give you a bit of context as to why we actually decided to build our own monster bike. So around 10 or 11 years ago, I first heard the rumours and saw the images online of a beast that had to be seen to be believed. The word on the street was that Maico, the former German powerhouse of 70s and 80s motocross, were to make a comeback to the MX mainstream. But what made that speculation so interesting to me and to so many others was that supposedly the mighty Maico weren't just making any old comeback. They were going to return armed with a goddamn 700cc two-stroke. This was the first time that I had ever been introduced to the outlandish and quite frankly ridiculous concept of a fire-breathing 700cc dirt bike. My imagination was running rampant and my premix fueled heart was in love with the idea of this monster two-stroke. Now, the return of Maico didn't quite happen like I perhaps imagined it, and we never saw an army of 700s being manufactured at scale. But Maico, or the German company that now owns the rights to the name, did in fact and still do produce a limited number of these big bore baddies. So ever since I was a 15-year-old lad, I've dreamed of seeing one of these behemoths in the flesh. And as this channel grew, those dreams slowly morphed into something else. I not only wanted to see one in the flesh, but I needed to make a video with one of these beasts. I just knew that my two-stroke loving subscribers, that's you guys, would absolutely love it. Over the next few years, I searched far and wide for someone that had one of these Maicos hiding in their shed that we could borrow for a day of filming. We had a couple of promising leads, but these mythical monsters proved to be as elusive as any other legendary creature of folklore. We simply couldn't find one. But as I mentioned, Kostler, the German company that owns the Maico brand, actually still do build these bikes to order. So instead of simply trying to borrow someone's bike for a day of filming, I decided to investigate whether it was a viable option to just go ahead and buy a new one. It wasn't. I did actually get in touch with Kostler and I did get a quote from them to build us a Maico 685. The bike itself would cost €14,995. That's £12,526 or $17,130. But then living in the UK, we would also have to pay 6% import duty on top of that, which brings the total to approximately £13,500. Plus, we would either have to drive all the way to Germany to pick the bike up or get the bike shipped here for an extra cost. So let's just say we'd have to pay an extra £500 to actually get hold of the bike. If you're watching from the States, I'm not sure what tax and import duties you would have to pay, but I do know that our buddy Ken Kaplan does in fact have a Maico 685 on order from Kostler, so I'm sure he'll be able to fill us in on the details on what it takes to get a bike over to the States. But anyway, sadly we didn't quite have £14,000 in the YouTube video budget last year, so I had to regrettably abandon the idea of buying a brand new beast. Despite this setback though, I was determined to keep our big bore dreams alive, and there was only one more avenue that we could pursue, but we knew it would be a long and daunting task. We might have been crazy to try, but if our calculations were correct, we reckoned we could build our own bike way cheaper than it would cost to import a new machine from Germany. And as you guys already know, we pulled the trigger and took the gamble. £14,000 was the price to beat. Did we manage to do it for less? Let's find out. The first step to get the ball rolling on Project 700 was to find, locate and purchase a motor. Now, the most popular engine used in custom 700 builds is the Zabel. The Zabel engine has a great pedigree in the sidecar world and is probably the most well-known unit in this bonkers big bore game. However, the first motor that we came across on good old Facebook Marketplace was something a little more exotic. We found a freshly rebuilt by the factory, practically unused motor made by a brand called Mega. Mega is an Austrian-based company that builds engines for the sidecar and karting disciplines. And although not as well known as the Zabel units, these things are supposed to be the most powerful 700cc motors in the world, with some crazy reported dyno figures. And unlike the motors in the Maico and ATK machines, which are 685cc, this thing is a fully fledged 700cc unit with a power valve. We travelled up to Newcastle and snapped up that motor as quick as we could. It also came with all the electrics and a brand new carb. Project 700 was officially no longer a dream. It was now a reality, and I had just dropped £3,500 to get us started. Next, we needed a chassis that had the space to accommodate our motor and the strength to deal with 700cc's of pure chaos. And as we was looking for that much needed strength and integrity, we knew that we had to search for a steel frame rather than a more modern alley chassis. After looking at other examples of custom 700cc's online, we concluded that an old Husselberg 650 would provide the perfect skeleton for our beast, especially because the drivetrain was on the right side, which matched up to our motor. Dave Clarke Racing is the go-to place for all things Husselberg in the UK. So we travelled to Preston to pick up our Roland chassis from him. It was a 2001 Husselberg 650 Enduro model. We hoped that our 700cc motor would fit in here nicely. It didn't, meaning it was time to get chopping. Now before I move on, I think there's two key aspects of our project that we need to consider when talking about the cost of the build. Firstly, we wanted to do it right. There's a lot of power at play here with this big heavy motor, so we knew we needed to get the fabrication work done properly by an expert to ensure that the bike was safe to ride when we were finished. We weren't cutting any corners in this regard. And secondly, we wanted our bike to be special. We wanted it to look special, sound special, and ride special. We wanted our beast to be a true head turner. So again, we didn't hold ourselves back when acquiring products and upgrading parts. We bought a rolling chassis from Dave Clarke Racing complete with wheels, suspension and brakes. But we wanted our bike to shine and we needed it to be special, so we pretty much stripped everything off and started from scratch. If we really wanted to crunch down on the budget, we could have certainly saved some pennies by recycling and reusing some of the parts from the original rolling chassis. But as the project went on, my ambitions only grew. Like I mentioned earlier, our motor wasn't going to fit in our frame straight up without some heavy modification. So I had to call in the Cavalry to help me complete the most vital part of the entire build. Now, if you're smart enough and experienced enough, you could probably do this part yourself and save yourself a load of dough. But that's not me. I don't have the smarts or the know-how to even begin thinking about how I'd squeeze 700cc's of madness into a dirt bike chassis. Luckily for me though, my friend Chris Thorpe certainly does have the smarts and the know-how to get this job done. Chris is one of the most prolific and creative bike builders in all the land. He produces these absolutely bonkers machines, and in his own words, he can fit anything into anything. He was the perfect man for the job, and the only guy that I knew that could help me turn my big board dreams into bone-shaking, arse-clenching reality. Not only did Chris do the fabrication work on the frame, but he also did pretty much all of the heavy lifting on the build of this bike. And his workshop was the base for Project 700 for many months. And obviously, this was time-consuming, labour-intensive work. So we had to compensate Chris accordingly, because without him, none of this would have been possible. As I mentioned, we wanted the Megalodon to stand out from the crowd. So we didn't cut any corners when it came to getting parts and products to not only get the beast running, but turn her into a real beauty. But as you know, we were working to a budget here, trying to build this thing for less than it would cost to buy a new one and all. Thankfully though, that quest was aided immensely by the generosity of so many of our friends in the industry who provided us with expertise, support and products for Project 700. We got a bunch of goodies from the likes of WP Suspension, Raptor Titanium, ESP Graphics, SM Pro Wheels, Apico, Venhill, Moto-Master and Hardcore Racing at discounted prices or free of charge, simply because those guys wanted to be involved with the project and support us with this crazy idea. And I was more than happy to big up, shout out and promote the guys that support us in our videos. I think it was a win-win for everyone involved. Some of the products, such as the alley tank, which cost £550, or the carbon plastics, which were £460 for 2 sets, were bought simply for aesthetic reasons, which I now deemed essential. But other components, such as the SM Pro wheels and the service of our rear brake caliper, which cost £110, as well as the brand new front forks, were legitimately essential in ensuring the overall safety and quality of the finished machine. As with any experimental project such as this, unforeseen problems are sure to arise and you're bound to incur some unexpected costs, as we would eventually find out. Our first dyno sessions highlighted some serious issues that we needed to address before we could take the Megalodon to the track and let her feed in anger. Firstly, she was running way too hot, which was endangering the engine. So we decided to get a much bigger, way more efficient radiator custom built for the bike. We were able to get this done by a local aluminium fabricator for a great price. Secondly, we realised that the beast just wasn't getting enough air through the carb because of our lack of a conventional airbox. Finding a solution to this would test our engineering prowess and creative ingenuity, and also involve some costly R&D. Eventually though, we did find a solution, but by the time we bought our K&N filters and had our custom part made up by an industry professional, we had spent a whopping £1,065. Finally, we had an exhaust pipe conundrum to overcome. The original pipe that we had bought and modified to fit the bike just wasn't providing the results we were looking for. We were at a complete loss at what to do, until Roland Shaw came to save the day. He set up a trip to the HGS HQ in Holland to get a custom pipe made up especially for the Megalodon. Obviously there were some costs involved in travelling over to the Netherlands to get this done, but as we had already bought a couple of 500 pipes from HGS for the project already, Henry and his awesome team kindly crafted this absolutely priceless pipe just for us free of charge. So all I can say is if you're looking for the best aftermarket pipes in the game, look nowhere else other than HGS. After riding the bike for the first time, we decided to invest in one last product to improve the experience for the rider. As you can imagine, the standard clutch on the beast was a little heavy to say the least. So we went out and bought a hydraulic clutch system to improve the feel. And that will be the Shark's final finishing touch. Well, for now anyway. So all in, we spent £11,325 to build our own custom 700cc two-stroke dirt bike. We successfully completed the project for £2,675 less than it would cost to buy a brand new Maico 700. But I'm not going to lie, our initial budget predictions did balloon as the project went on. Initially, we thought we could complete the build for less than £9,000. But obviously, we got a little carried away making her look pretty, and we did have those development issues to overcome towards the end of the project, which is what took us over that 9k threshold. However, I think it would have definitely been possible to do the build for less if we decided to go down the cheap route, make more use of the ratty components from the original rolling chassis, and not really care about the overall aesthetic appeal of the bike. But if we did that, then the Megalodon just wouldn't be the Megalodon, would it? On the other hand, it's very worth noting that our expenses certainly would have soared a lot higher if it wasn't for the support of some great people and companies in the industry. We had a lot of help with products, either at subsidised prices or free of charge, and that's not even to mention the other services that we are treated to as well, such as the vapor blast cleaning on the swing arm, the full service of our rear shock, and the countless hours we spent in the dyno room. I can only guesstimate what the real cost would have been if we didn't have such great friends and relationships with companies in the industry that wanted to help us achieve something really cool. But if I had to put a number on it, let's be generous and say that it would have meant an extra £2,000 across the board on parts, products and services. But even with those hypothetical costs added on, we were still able to complete the project under budget. Of course, we had the support of Muck-Off from the offset, which really helped lighten the burden of that gamble, as did the support from you guys buying Megalodon apparel from our merch store. But even with that, this was certainly the scariest, most ambitious project of my YouTube career so far. It wasn't easy, and at times it wasn't pretty. But I think we have proven that it is indeed possible to build a 700cc two-stroke dirt bike for less than it costs to buy one. And I think that's pretty cool. Once again, I really hope you enjoyed Project 700 last year. It was a blast for us to create. It was a tight run thing in terms of budget, and I think that if you don't have the friends and connections in the industry that we're lucky enough to have, you might well be better off buying a new bike from Costler. But for us, one of the coolest things about building our own custom bike was that, as far as we know, we now have the only mega powered 700cc solo dirt bike in the world. And that's pretty rad if you ask me. But it also gave us the opportunity to entertain you guys with a unique and very special build series for 999 Laser. And for us, just can't put a price on that. What would you guys like to see us build next? Let me know in the comments down below. And as I said before, the 700cc journey certainly isn't over yet. We've got some very cool plans in store, and I think it's safe to say that the Megalodon has a very busy year ahead. As always guys, my name is Max, this is 999 Laser. Remember to like, share and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. And until next time, I'll see you at the track.